Hello, everyone. Welcome to the BirthFit podcast. I am beyond excited for this episode. You can probably hear it in my voice. I don't get like too fangirly, geeked out too much. Like even when I worked in Hollywood and with all kinds of famous celebrities and athletes that were just well known all over the world. I could give two shits, but our guest today is the one and only Yolanda Norris Clark. And I mean, if you know her, you know how legendary this is. She's truly a living legend. And I will probably butcher like all the things she does. She wears many hats. She is definitely a mother, a wife, a writer, a storyteller, a radical birth keeper, and just an epic human being. And I really can't wait for you to get to know her, to meet her if this is your first time hearing about her and meeting her and listening to what she has to say. She created a program called the Free Birth Society with a woman named Emily Saldina, and I'm hopefully did not butcher that last name too much. They have a podcast called the Free Birth Society. And actually, Emily does it mostly, but Yolanda has her own private membership group. She's got a wonderful new program that just came out called Portal. And I hope you can go follow her on Instagram right now, Bao Housewife, and that is BAUHAUSWIFE. So I will save the rest for when she gets here. But yeah, go follow her on Instagram. You'll get a sneak peek at who she is and just just the amazingness that she gives to this world. And I truly believe that she is a light for this world and living out her purpose, which is really, really powerful. And she puts so eloquently, I'm stumbling over words. She puts um, things into words and yeah, that just are beautiful about birth, about politics, about the medical industrial complex. And as you can see, I stumble over words a lot. So I'm really stoked for you to listen to Yolanda and just get to know her. So I'm going to send her an invite, get it going. And while we are waiting, I want you to just make note. We've had some awesome um, BirthFit things come out. We have a B community monthly membership, and this is where you need to be. This is where all things are happening. This includes fitness. This includes education. This includes connection. And now I lost you. Where'd you go? Eh. StreamYard, there you are. Okay, so link sent. This membership is only $24.99 a month for right now, so get it while it's hot. We have amazing guest speakers come in. I was thinking about holding Yolanda privately for just the B community, but I do think like what she has to say and who she is in this world is just so powerful that I really want this episode to be shared. Like, share it with anyone. I'm going to share it with my husband right after I'm done here because I think he needs to hear some of the things she has to say. But yeah, go check out B Community. This is our new monthly membership. Fitness, education, connection. We have at least 2 to 4 virtual gatherings a month, guest speakers, subject like specific subject topics we discuss. For instance, in July, we have a whole preconception prep virtual gathering. We have a midwife talking in July. We have Emily Abbott talking at the end of July. And yeah, lots of cool things on deck for August. I promise you, it's the place for you to grow as a woman, for you to get the best fitness that you can do at home, you can take to a gym, whatever. It is the best, most sustainable programming. There's always breath work. And oh, and it's efficient. Like, we've programmed this so that you can get it done in 45 minutes or less. You can definitely stretch it out. Like, I know there's some people that like to stretch things out. I used to train with some of those people at the gym, and they can certainly stretch training out for 2 hours, but, that's not me at this chapter of my life anymore, and, I want the best bang for my buck, frankly, and that's what we have, over the years of fitness experience and, working in women's health. Both Coach Leah and I have, combined decades of experience working in the fitness and birth world, and this programming, this training inside B Community is for those in the preconception chapter. It's for those that are syncing up with their menstrual cycle. It's for those that are pregnant, for those that are postpartum, in between kiddos, maybe in between baby 2, baby 3 and 4, whatever. This is a place to come back home to yourself through movement, through connection, and through education. So check it out, please. The other thing I will add is, let me get over here, BIRTHFIT. Let me see. Let's get, we've got some awesome partner stuff listed on our shop. Bubs Collagen. We have Equip protein powder. We've got Katara Yoni steaming. And the last thing I want to do before we get into just waiting till Yolanda gets here is reading a review. So if I read your review, email us info@birthfit.com and you will get an awesome t-shirt. So today I am reading Tori Chafin. I know this person. So want to take charge of your birth? Question mark. Want to unleash your feminine power? Question mark. Listen to the BirthFit podcast and enroll in the BirthFit programs. I second that. My life has been changed by BirthFit, and I will be forever grateful. I wouldn't have had a beautiful, perfect home birth after cesarean without the BirthFit community. Tori, thank you for that awesome testimonial, that awesome review. I really appreciate that. And, I'm just even more proud of you and honored to be part of your journey, honored for BirthFit to be part of your journey. From an outside point of view looking in, it's been a beautiful, messy journey, and you've owned it. So thank you. Get your t-shirt. Be sure to email us. So yeah, reminder, leave us a review on iTunes and I will be sure to scroll down and read some. And if I read yours, then you will get some BirthFit swag. So the link has been sent to Yolanda. I know she's on a different time zone and doing all the things under the mother hat and the wife hat and just the total radical human awesomeness hat. So we'll give her a minute. A few things. If you are not signed up for our newsletter, our general newsletter, do so. We just sent an awesome newsletter out with 3 videos on it, talking about prolapse, breathing, and if you have prolapse going into another pregnancy, just some tips there. So be sure you're on our newsletter because you will get some good stuff there. The other thing I wanted to mention is if you are interested, I'll mention this at the end. Hey, I think I see her.
Oh my
How are
goodness. Hi, Lindsay. Are
Welcome.
we actually live?
It goes, yeah, we are live.
We are. Okay, amazing. I actually can't hear you
What?
yet. So give me a moment. Let me see what's going on here.
What?
Can I hear you now, Lindsay? I wonder.
I can hear you. Nothing.
You can hear me.
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Hmm.
Give me 1 sec.
Yeah. Everything looks good over here.
Oh. Okay. This is terrible. I'm so sorry.
This is okay. No, I try to keep it very
Let's
real
get
and
it
raw.
together.
People love that.
Maybe I need headphones. Magic. Do I need headphones? Try it.
Let me see.
Hi, Lindsay.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Test, test, test. Nothing? Well, shoot.
Let me go and come right back. Okay. See you in a minute.
All right, take 2. Y'all, I have gotten lots of comments that y'all do love this real and raw version of the podcast. I've been loving StreamYard. And yeah, that was one of the reasons I came back to podcasting was I didn't want to deal with producers or all the steps of producing a podcast right now. I just wanted to get the podcast, the episodes out. And I've loved StreamYard. This was referred to me by somebody. So if you have feedback, let me know. Okay, let's try this again. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear
Heck
me okay?
yeah. Yes.
Amazing. Amazing. We did it. All right.
Awesome. Well, I'm so stoked that you're here and we finally get to do a podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. It feels like it's been a long time coming. I've been looking forward to this.
I know. Well, I've given a brief introduction of who you are, and I really like the way you've recently described yourself on the intro to the portal. And yeah, I listened to that and I loved it.
Amazing.
But can you tell our audience who you are and maybe some of the many hats that you wear in this world?
Oh my goodness. Yes, many hats. So I'm Yolanda Norris Clark. Hi, everyone. I am known on Instagram and a couple of other places as Bah Housewife, that has its own story to it. But I'm a writer. I'm a teacher, childbirth wellness consultant. Birth witness is also how I describe myself. And I think of myself as kind of a champion of self-healing and health freedom and personal sovereignty. Oh, and spell breaker, way shower. There we go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where are you calling in from? Where are you living right now? Because I know you're originally Canadian, and over the last couple of years, you've migrated. Yeah, so give us a little insight into that journey.
Indeed, yeah, it's been quite the journey, figurative and literal. So I am from Canada, and I lived my first 39 years of life in Canada. And in October of 2020, my husband and our then 6 children And we left Canada and we traveled first to the Dominican Republic, and then we lived in Costa Rica for almost a year, and we now call Nicaragua home.
Oh my
So
god.
we've settled in Nicaragua, and we love it. It's wonderful. Yeah, we're having a great time. Yeah, but
That's
it's very different from Canada, from North America.
yeah, I'm sure. And, we've talked all about, the COVID shenanigans on this podcast, and, we've had some awesome people on here. So we won't get into it too much, but, I'm guessing that was the big reason for y'all leaving, or were y'all planning on leaving before?
No, we weren't actually. I never 3 years ago, it never would have crossed my mind that we would ever live in another place. Um, and I could not have pointed to Nicaragua on a map 3 years ago. So yeah,
Wow,
our move was absolutely inspired by the shenanigans, as you so diplomatically put it, Lindsay. But looking back, it actually makes so much
yeah.
sense, and I was able to see in retrospect that I actually was never very happy in
Mm,
Eastern Canada. I never really felt at home there. It wasn't my place, and so, as they say, everything happens for a reason, all in
yeah.
divine timing, and yeah, I'm just ever grateful for Saint Rona, for all of her all of the wisdom that she's
Yeah,
opportunities that she's brought to all of us. Yeah.
awesome. Alright, so let's get into basically how you got started on birth, like, 'cause I know in some places you've described that, you were, like, supposed to be a lawyer, and this I mean, I do see that showing up here in the work you do, but yeah, and you have 8 kids?
I actually have 9
9 now,
children.
okay.
Mhm, but my
Okay,
husband and I have 7. So, I have
okay.
2 older kids, who are in their early 20s, now, and, yeah, and my youngest is 6 months old. I mean, I was supposed to be a lawyer. Yeah, that was a long while ago because I was pregnant with my first baby at age 19, and actually, in many ways, that was my number 1 rebellion
Mm, mm.
I mean, yeah, it was sort of my initial step in exiting the matrix,
Yeah,
maybe, or ensuring that I never really, was ever accepted into the matrix. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
so really I got started in birth. Well, it's interesting because my mother was always very, very open with me about my entry into the world, so her
mm,
birth experience with me, and she had a very traumatic, abusive experience giving birth to me, and I've done some work myself in the area of, um, regression and perinatal psychology, and even before that, I knew on a very visceral, embodied level that, um, as well as an intellectual level, thanks to my mother's openness, that everything that happened around my own birth was not good
mhm,
and also not necessary. So my mom was very aware, very self-aware, and she always shared my birth story with me from this perspective that everything that was done to her and to me was terrible and ridiculous, and I appreciate that so much. I appreciate her openness and honesty so much because it really shaped my perspective of birth, and there was never a time when I didn't think I would become a mother or that I didn't just know in
mm,
completely that I could give birth. And
mm,
so when I became pregnant at 19, uh, well, that was actually following I was pregnant twice at 19. So my first pregnancy ended in a miscarriage. And at that time, I really didn't know anything at all, and there was a lot of blood and it was very painful, and so everyone around me was telling me that I needed to go to the hospital, and so
mm,
I did. And that was a very, very traumatic experience as well for me, and, I'll never forget leaving the hospital and just walking out into the sunlight and just knowing that I would never be back,
Mm,
ever.
mm,
And that's pretty much borne out, and 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant again. And that was that. That kind of sent me on my way, and I read everything that I could possibly get my hands on about pregnancy and birth, mainstream stuff,
mhm,
alternative stuff, everything. And, yeah, I decided I would give birth at home, and I did. And then
mm.
I did again and again. And so now I have 9
And
babies.
again and again, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely wanna get into that, but, how did you know you wanted to support women or, be a guide, because you are quite the I look up to you as, like, an elder woman with wisdom, in this global community.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, it's funny. I actually took a training with the woman who became one of my primary mentors, Gloria LeMay, when I was pregnant with my first baby.
Mm.
And the inspiration for that was not so much that I really thought I would ever become a birth witness or that I would work in the area of midwifery, but that I wanted to know everything that I could know for my own birth, because my plan initially with that first pregnancy was that I would give birth on my own. I really had this sort of dream that I would not have anyone around me. Anyway, it took 9 pregnancies for that to happen. Um, in the end, I did invite Gloria to that birth, but I did a training with her during my pregnancy. So, um, yeah, I did this sort of midwifery doula training with her, and then I had my baby, and I was still in the realm of birth, and I had just kind of entered into this circle where everyone I knew was into birth, and it was a really interesting scene actually at that time. This was in the, late 1990s in BC on the West Coast, and yeah, it was a really interesting emerging community at the same time that midwifery legislation and licensure was being implemented, so there was kind of a yeah, a very interesting political dynamic in BC at the time. Anyway, I had another baby after that, and then I moved to the East Coast where home birth was not really something that was at all in the mainstream, and that's when I became pregnant with my 3rd baby, and it was at that time that I started to write about birth and to write about birth publicly. So I started my first blog then, it was like the Housewife blog. Um, yeah, and I just shared my perspectives and my experiences, and women started to reach out to me to say that they were interested in home birth as well, and could I support them? Did I have any advice for
Yeah.
them? Um, and I don't ever give advice, by the way. I didn't then and I don't now, but I was always very and I'm still very happy to share my opinion and my perspective
Mhm.
on birth. And so I ended up just sort of being chosen by my community, in a way that was very organic and very real, and um, initially, I kind of thought, like, "I don't really wanna this is too much." I mean, in the interim period between having my first baby and starting to go out and witness births and support other women in birth, my mentor, Gloria LeMay, was sent to jail,
Oh,
um, by the Canadian government for daring to, support women in birth, and that whole I mean,
that's
seeing
wild.
that happen was a major turnoff at the time for me, to be honest. Like, I was really scared, and I didn't
Mm,
really want to have anything to do with that. But when I started to have women reach out to me, it was sort of like, "Well, I mean, what are
you're
you gonna
it.
do?" I'm it. Yeah, yeah, really, and it was that was a huge turning point for me, accepting that call,
Mhm.
realizing that, um, that this work is a calling, and it is a vocation, and it is, kind of a life's work, and things just grew from there, and, these days I occasionally, support mothers in person, um, selectively,
Yeah.
and but primarily I'm working online and yeah, supporting families across the world and teaching midwifery in the Radical Birthkeeper School and all kinds of other things too, so, yeah.
Ooh, that's awesome. What, most of the audience for BirthFit is still in the United States. So, I don't know if people realize kinda then I don't know a better word for it than whack, like how like, what's happening in Canada. Like, yeah, are midwives still allowed, or certain parts or, um, well, yeah, what's going on in Canada?
Well, I think what's happening in Canada is it's not all that different really from what's happening all over the world, including in the US to some extent.
Mhm.
So, I don't know the specifics of the politics of midwifery in the US in the way that I do in Canada, but I'm not a fan of any form of licensure or regulation at all.
Mm,
And I know in many states in the US, even midwives that call themselves independent or that sort of function independently, they often are still subject to rules and regulations from some kind of uh,
mhm.
overarching
Totally,
regulatory body or college,
yeah.
right? And, in my view, any dynamic like that, uh, it sets up it sets up a conflict of interest, essentially. I
Mhm.
don't think it's really possible to serve women in full integrity if you're also answering to the state or to a medical board or to any other kind of, yeah, regulatory body. And so
That makes sense.
in essence, what I see having happened all over the world really is the the appropriation of
Mm,
midwifery, the name and the concept by
yeah.
the allopathic medical community. And so in Canada, on the surface, midwifery is in every province or almost
Mm,
every province, and it's wonderful, and there's so much access, and all you have to do is um, yeah, be willing to have a birth that fits into the very narrow expectations or requirements that will, yeah, ensure that whatever that your body follows all the rules and everything is great. But if you peel back the sort of surface veneer of of how midwifery is described, what you'll find is a a practice that looks a lot more like nursing and doctoring than what I think many people still have in their minds as to what midwifery
mhm,
constitutes. So it's really not a very holistic approach to birth at all. It's a highly medicalized one, and in some ways, midwives who are working in the Canadian system, and I think this is similar in a lot of places, including in
yeah,
some states. They're actually really scared all the time because there's a lot of pressure on them to, ensure that their statistics are whatever. They have high insurance premiums. A lot of them come out of school, an academic, highly medicalized education for the
mhm,
most part, with enormous debt, and it's just not. It's not in my view, really an authentic form of care that is rooted in a perspective on birth that, in my experience, is, yeah, reflective of what birth can be and of how
yeah,
birth is really designed to be and of the enormous power and capacity that birth presents to us, and also of the just immense scope of what is actually normal in birth. I think that
yeah,
our our understanding of birth has really been constrained by the medical model and the kind of programming that we're all subject to from birth through birth and then in every area of life. I mean the programming and the kind of conditioning
Mhm.
that we absorb on a unconscious level as well as in a very overt way is really it's all pervasive in every area of life. I mean, the media depictions of birth in on TV and in in movies, everything you'll read about birth, it's just a bombardment constantly of this really fear-based programming.
Yeah.
And birth is remarkably, it just works so well.
Mm.
But it tends to work less well when it's being sabotaged, which
Mhm.
I think is mostly what's happening in the system, whether that's in the hospital or in situations where hospital protocols and procedures are imported into a home setting.
Totally. It's, like, for those listening, I see it a lot with, like, in the US, there's CPMs and CNMs, nurse midwives and professional midwives, and early on in my career, I had an office, one at a CPM and one at a CNM in LA, and it was just such a different environment. One, like you said, believed in birth, and the other, wanted it to follow a certain timeline, let's break waters, let's do this sort of thing. And I this was early on in my career, so I was like, okay, this is just starting to feel off. Like I need to make a switch here. But it's like the midwives that are within the hospital systems here, or the birth centers that are attached to the hospitals here in the United States. And you can see it with their induction rates or their cesarean rates or, things like that. So definitely ask about that, y'all. If you're exploring that. So yeah, Yolanda, how would you describe birth?
Oh, wow. That's a
I feel like I've heard you describe it before and it's so great. But yeah, how would you describe it in this moment?
Well, I have to say that the way I feel compelled to describe birth now is very different from how I would describe
Um,
it, how I would have described it, uh, 6 or 7 months ago,
yeah.
because I just gave birth 6 months ago to my ninth baby, and for the first time, I experienced birth as just a total immersion in absolute bliss and
Mm,
transcendence. It was a full experience of spiritual awakening to just the most exquisite pleasure you could possibly imagine, and it completely blew my mind. It really did. So, I
oh,
mean, yeah, that's really all there is to it. It was absolutely mind-blowing, and I'm 41 years old, and I really would like to just do that one more time.
yeah.
At least one more time. I know it's nuts, but it was just such an incredible experience, and, it's a good example. The birth that I just, went through is also a good example of just the the vast scope of a variety of experiences
Mhm.
that's possible in birth, um, because each of my previous births, I have adored. All 9 of my babies were born at home. I had my beloved traditional birth attendant present with me, my illegal midwife present with me during my first 2 births, but the 7 subsequent births were all free births. I
Yeah.
was really on my own with my family, and I adore each and every one of my birth experiences from my first birth, which was 55 hours long and just, oh my god, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was 8 hours of, like, screaming and pushing. I've had 1-hour births, with my oldest daughter. I went to sleep. I woke up at midnight, thought I'd peed the bed. No, it was my amniotic waters that had opened, and then 50 minutes later, she was in the world. So that was, I mean, talk about
Shoot.
contrast. Yeah, and then my 8th birth was, oh my goodness, I just traveled to the underworld. It was so scary and
Mm,
so dark and so intense and, like, excruciatingly painful. And all of my births up until then have involved just so much intensity and, like, I'm a warrior and I just push through. And then this last birth it was just the easiest thing I've ever done. It was so easeful and so simple, and there was no effort whatsoever, and I just kind of danced my
mm,
way through it in utter bliss. But the the specifics of the birth were very interesting in a different way. So, my waters released early, unexpectedly, actually. I was thinking that I would have another 3 or 4 weeks to remain pregnant. So this was my shortest pregnancy by a long shot.
mm,
I was 40 weeks or 39 weeks, when, and I mean, the weeks thing, all
yeah,
that stuff is really, it's actually nonsense. I'm not even really sure why it's hard to, this is such a process of unlearning. I'm still
yeah.
deprogramming as we all are, but, yeah, I mean, the weeks thing, it's all of that is arbitrary nonsense, but it is interesting just to kind of look at how our bodies work in comparison with with the reflection of
Mm,
what is sort of imposed on us in the system. So all of my first my first 8 babies were all born at almost 44 weeks. So I
oh,
have
God.
historically had really
Long
long
pregnancy.
pregnancies. Yeah, and I mean, it's long. What does long even mean? All my babies
Yeah.
were born at exactly the right time. My biggest baby was 10.5 pounds, and his birth was super fast and easy, like, intense, and, like, it was actually such a fun birth, but it was super intense, but it was very fast, and he just came right out, no problem. Um, but yeah, so my ninth baby, I was totally shocked when my waters broke. I had so much to do in those coming
Mm,
4 weeks, Lindsay, like, I'd planned all kinds of things. I was gonna organize this and that. Anyway, my waters broke, and, the next day, I was still pregnant with my water leaking everywhere. So that evening, we went paddle boarding, and I had a beautiful time in the ocean, and then the next day, I was still pregnant with my waters leaking and, a little bit of meconium in there and, some blood and interesting stuff, but I felt great, and, I tuned in to my baby, and there was no sign of any of this being a problem. It was just, open waters, and then I went to bed that night thinking, "Oh, I'll probably have a baby tonight," and then I woke up on the 3rd day, and I was still pregnant, and then the 4th day came around, and by that 4th day, I was really kind of in that liminal space throughout those all of those 4 days, and by the time the 4th day came around, things were very trippy, and I was very spaced out, um and eventually, it got more psychedelic, and I just had this entirely blissful, beautiful experience. But uh, this is an example of the kind of situation which, in the system, would inevitably have been absolutely pathologized and turned into a massive problem, and used as a rationalization or justification for all kinds of interventions that were not in any way necessary because my baby was born at exactly the right time, and it was such a beautiful experience. So, yeah, how do I describe birth? I mean, the most blissful thing that you could possibly enter into. Yeah.
mm. So what do you think, like, oftentimes in our well, first of all, I think that's awesome and complete like, I love that you said that, because I do think it's possible for every woman. Um, and I will say oftentimes in, like, the women we encounter coming through BirthFit, um, they think they can outwork labor or they can, check the boxes or, be so strong and show up, and, they're like, I've trained, done all the things, now I get this. Um, but I was loving on your recent, video for Birthing and Bliss, how you kinda had the stereotypes, and, can you talk about that a little bit? Because that for sure came up, I was like, "Okay, I can pinpoint all of these women here," and I've observed them, and yeah, it's tough to watch them go through their journey and get stuck sometimes.
It is, yeah, and, that approach to birth, this sort of, like, "I'm gonna, like, vanquish this and power
Yeah,
through it, and, like, I'm gonna fight my way through."
yeah.
Um, there's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
Like, that's one way to do it, and that's kind of
Totally.
how I did it, and like I said, I really wanna emphasize this, I have loved all of my births,
Mm,
and all of my births have been reflective of where I was at that point in my life, um, but also, there's so many layers to this. It's
mhm,
also that I recognize now I really didn't have modeled to me or kind of introduced to me, or there weren't women in my life who were kind of sharing with me that that's actually all of that is optional. Like, you can
yeah,
do that, and maybe you need to do that, and that's okay, but you also don't have to do that. It doesn't have to be that way. There are sort of processes and ways and techniques and tools that you can use to have a very different kind of experience. And what I see is that our beliefs really do shape our reality.
mhm,
Um, and I think there's an idea that a belief is like an idea or kind of a notion. And I think there's some misunderstanding about what belief really means. Belief is not so much a surface level thing. It's something that really is incorporated into our bodies, and it's connected to trauma, and it's connected to program. So there's a
mhm,
lot kind of to
mhm,
that. But what I see, sorry, I keep hitting the table. Okay. What I see in a lot of women is that we all have our blind spots, right?
yeah,
And so I see a lot of women who, well, don't think they can do it, who
mhm,
just don't believe that they can do it, and that's gonna be true, right? Like, if you don't really think that you can handle birth, then that will come true for you.
mhm,
Um, and then there are a lot of women who kind of who want to try, but whose actions in the world don't necessarily line up with that
mm,
expression, right? So, um, yeah, I mean, we all have areas of our lives where we contradict ourselves, but I see that come up a lot in birth. So it's like, oh, I'd really love to try to have a natural birth.
yeah,
And then, you're actually doing all kinds of things that are setting you up for the opposite.
mhm,
It's
mhm,
a lot. Um, and then there are a lot of women like me who or like I was in who are functioning from the same kind of mindset that I was, which is like, I am so tough and I'm so strong and I'm totally gonna be able to do this and like, "Ugh."
mhm,
And yeah, that's gonna be true too. So there's a lot of work in this area, if for women who are curious
mm,
about what birth can be. Um, I think the biggest message that I want to get across is that it's you're not constrained. I want women to know that there is so much more possibility through birth than what 99% of all of the information out there is going to offer you,
Mhm.
right? That birth actually can be, and in a way, I mean, this is a tricky thing to talk about. Like I really believe that everything that occurs is how we need it to occur for us.
Yeah.
Every experience we have is giving us, the next step in our personal
Oh,
evolution.
totally.
And so, like, there's no wrong way to do birth. I mean, even for women who have, difficult traumatic hospital births, all of this is for it's, as my dear friend Emily says, it's all for our learning, right? And it really is. I believe that absolutely. Um, but there are also other possibilities for birth that
Mhm.
we're not generally, introduced to in
Yeah.
the sort of wider culture. Um,
Yeah. Maybe this is a good time to ask the question, like, how do you like, a lot of, well, let me back up. Before we get into postpartum, because I do wanna touch on postpartum. But, talking about, the power that, we as women have within us and using birth as a connection to God and that portal, like you called it as a portal. Um, for some reason, like, maybe it's the rebel in me, like, I've always kind of thought that, and, I've always thought, like, why like, when women say, "Oh, you don't have to experience that pain. You can get an epidural." Or, "Why would you even try, honey?" But backing up, you touch on this a lot, how it's basically the medical industrial complex that and the programming that, has just, like, inundated us, and yeah, taught us to fear something that is so just natural, part of our physiology. Um, so yeah, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
yeah, I think what I'm realizing now is that there was part of me. I can see now in retrospect that the intensity of birth was part of my evolution. Like, I needed to
Mm,
have that to maybe on some level feel completely alive. I mean, I
mm,
never really I never really I don't like to, characterize birth as painful. So,
mhm,
I've never even the births that I've had, all 8 of them, that have been incredibly intense with so much sort of bigness of emotion and
mhm,
sensation. Um, I don't call that pain. Pa it's not
yeah,
pain, but birth doesn't has in the past involved pain for me. Um, but that's not the totality of it. Birth, even
mhm,
at its most intense, uh, it's everything. Birth incorporates every single emotion for many of us. Um, and I've always felt that birth is a profoundly spiritual experience, and I've never felt um, kind of offended or damaged or hurt by the intensity or even the aspects of
mm,
birth that are painful. I've always experienced birth as a portal of sorts. Um, and what I know to be true about birth, and this is, I think, very, very important, is that the only the only way to really experience it in a how do I put this? You can't escape birth.
mm,
Uh, there's no way to get around what birth really is fundamentally, which I think is this kind of connection point to the divine.
Mhm.
And when a mother goes through the process, um, and her body is numbed, or she's taking the gas,
Mhm.
or she's on fentanyl, or whatever analgesics are available in the allopathic system. The intensity of birth, it doesn't like disappear. It it's still part of us, and it just gets modified and I think held in our cells in a different sort of way.
Mhm.
Um, and that has to be dealt with. And I don't really know. I think it's different for everyone, and I can't explain how that actually works, but I do feel a sense of knowing that the experience of birth can't just be, it can't really be numbed out. It
Mm.
can in the moment, but that, there's part of us and part of our psyche and our bodies that holds that and that has to do something with it. So
Mhm.
I actually think that a lot of those kinds of experiences of medicalized industrial birth um, end up in the end being a lot more traumatic than what a lot of people believe the potential pain or intensity of birth really is.
Mm.
Um, yeah, but again, my perspective on all of this has really shifted since having had this incredibly easy, just simple, sweet, delightful, pleasurable birth experience. And I did feel that on a different level in all of the ways. So physically, it felt very different. Mentally and psychologically, it felt very different. And spiritually, the entire the entirety of it was kind of it just felt like a direct communication with God,
Mhm.
Lindsay. Which I know sounds a little bit out there, but
No.
maybe for some people, but it was really quite amazing. So I guess my point is that there's no bypassing any of this.
Yeah.
Um, but there are, like I said, and I really believe and know this, there are um, some mental tools and processes and practices that can expedite and facilitate
Mm.
the experience of having birth be very, very easeful and pleasurable and just delightful. And that's what my this new program that I've just launched called Portal is all about. And I'm just so excited about it because I think it really is a lot different from a lot of other programs out there. And I've worked a lot with women one-on-one in the past 6 months that I've, shared a lot of these ideas with. And more I'm getting feedback from them as they have their babies that, yeah, I'm so mind blown. I can't believe that I just had the easiest, loveliest birth ever. And it's so wonderful. And I'm still kind of figuring out how to talk about this because again, the intense, wild, crazy, I've loved my animal births where I'm just, like, naked and and
Mhm.
it's great, and that was what I needed at the time, but, yeah, it can be totally different from that, and I don't think we hear a lot about that
No.
in culture.
No. I feel like, what you're describing is, like, as women, we're so fortunate to have the opportunity to give birth, and it's almost like a medicine, or, I say medicine in quotations, not medicine like pharmaceutical, but more along the lines of, like, the psychedelic world, and, um, it's like
Oh,
whatever you need in that moment.
it is so much like that, Lindsay, and I've had a few
Yeah.
experiences in the, psychonautic realm, uh, and birth is way, way crazier and wilder and more intense than anything in the plant world or in the realm of, any of that, so it really is whatever we need in the moment, yes, And here's another piece actually that I think is super important. It gives us, well, yeah, I think birth is always a reflection of our inner state and
Mm,
of our kind of state of mind, state of being, for sure. Um, and a lot of us are addicted to drama. A lot
mhm,
of us are really addicted to uh, a kind of, yeah, a kind of victim drama. And I see
mm,
that in myself, and it's so humbling, like, just all of the ranting and raving and, it
yeah,
doesn't have to be like that.
yeah, I get that. And it's,
Oh, dear.
we've had to learn, or some of us have had to learn to sit in the uncomfortable or sit in the quiet, sit in the darkness.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, and we can or we don't have to either, and, it's all good, and this is also something that is so important to me, to really emphasize when I'm teaching midwifery, and that's that however the mother presents, whatever is going on for her, however she is expressing her process or her inner self, whatever kind of drama she's bringing, that is all allowed. Like, it's all
Mhm,
allowed and it's all okay. So I really don't want anything that I'm saying to ever come across as, um, yeah, critical of how birth emerges for us.
mm,
Um, and at the same time, we can consciously shift some of those dynamics if we choose to, if we're curious about having a different kind of experience.
mm. That's a good segue into healing because the
Mhm.
power of choice is everything, and you hit on it a ton. And, I loved recently I'm part of your group, your private membership group, and I'm so behind on all the videos, but, we just opened an office here and we're 6 months in, and so that's been consuming all my time, but whenever I can, I'm like, "Oh, let me watch this video," or when I'm driving. So I recently watched the postpartum video and healing the pelvic lattice, and you nailed so many things, that we often encounter, as people. A lot of women find us postpartum, and then that's how they do the training programs prenatally and start to work with us. But they often come to us because they want that one exercise to fix their pelvic floor or, and I say the word fix, like, in quotations, like, fix their DRA, fix their prolapse, fix this, fix that, and, that's not what we do, and I hate to break it to them because it becomes a huge mindset shift, and I, often say, like, "Okay, there's 3 things we gotta focus on." It's your patterns, yes, your movement patterns, your breathing patterns, so that's what they come to us for, but it's your nourishment, like, how well you're nourishing yourself. We say soul, but, like, everything, and then your mindset, and you nailed it in the postpartum, healing the pelvic lattice. Can you talk a little bit about your postpartum healing journey?
Oh my goodness. Well, I've done it all.
Yeah.
I've really done it all, and, I really love what you guys are doing, and one of the benefits of being a mother of many, many babies is that I've had the opportunity to really, like, test out various approaches to pregnancy and birth and mothering.
Awesome.
Um, and, all of my babies were born at home, totally outside of the allopathic system. Um, but, uh, I've experienced both pregnancy and birth from really across the spectrum of age. I'm 41 now.
Yeah.
Um, and various levels, degrees of fitness. And I've also supported a really wide cross section of women in birth in person, from very young, apparently healthy mothers to
Yeah.
women be called obese in the system to women, many many women who were labeled high risk for various reasons. And without a doubt, being fit, being strong, maintaining a high level of physical performance and capacity during pregnancy is just, it's such a gift for so many reasons. And by far, my most easeful and enjoyable experiences of postpartum and pregnancy were those during which I was, not just active during my pregnancies, but really dedicated to maintaining a high level of fitness. So I really love everything that you guys are. I actually
Yeah.
hung out on your website a little bit last night because I was like, oh, I gotta prepare for my interview with Lindsay. It's really beautiful. And what I also know and what I've experienced and have witnessed in other women is that birth itself, like the birth process itself, does not require that much from like it that's not the fitness piece really.
Right.
And it's not just that like lack of fitness is not an excuse to not have a natural birth, although I do understand why women who are often afraid of birth will sometimes, cite the fact that they're not fit as to why they might be like planning a C-section or whatever. Um, but I also see, excess weight or being unfit used as a justification or a rationalization on the part of medical professionals as to why they want to do all kinds of nonsense to women. Uh, and that's complete nonsense in my view. It just really it isn't true. It's a very limited and limiting perspective, and it's limiting by design because when women are afraid of birth or who've been convinced or told that their bodies are flawed or lacking or ill-equipped to give birth, it's going to be a lot easier for them to be, influenced and controlled, and they'll be better able to be made to acquiesce to the authority of medical professionals. And so it makes the system run more smoothly. But so, on one hand, birth works no matter your level of fitness, fat, thin, out of shape, whatever. Our bodies are designed to give birth. And, as I'm sure you know, Lindsay, like it's amazing. I mean, our bodies are incredible. Women can give birth in comas, not to mention women who are paralyzed. And so, birth works. Actually, one of my former students in the Radical Birthkeeper School, she recently worked with a mother who was wheelchair bound, who was paralyzed from the waist down and who had a free birth in her home alone. Like it was absolutely amazing. So just shows how powerful our bodies are. But fitness is so important just in terms of making the experience of pregnancy and recovery postpartum so much more enjoyable. The aches and pains that are characterized as normal parts of pregnancy are not. Like it does not have to. It's not. I've worked with so many women over the years who are, just blindsided by pubic symphysis disorder in pregnancy. I mean, even that name, like pubic symphysis disorder, like that's like that doesn't mean that just essentially describes the symptoms of pelvic girdle pain that results when the ligament. Right. It just like it's not like a thing. It's just this is what happens when you're not strong, right?
Totally.
So I have done it all. I've had just a quick little anecdote here. So which baby was that? I have to think backwards. 9, 8, 7. This is for real. I'm sorry. Okay. Baby number 6. I think I was 36 years old when I was pregnant with Cosmo, and I was not really in great shape at all during that pregnancy. And by the end of it, oh my goodness, I could barely walk. I was in so much pain, just like I couldn't sleep. It just all the aches and pains that are like, oh, well, aches and pains. And I was 36. Yeah, I had it all. And I was 36 and I thought to myself for a moment, a very brief moment, I'm too old. I'm just too old, and that's the end of it. And I've like reached the end of the line, and I may as well just like give up, and this is it. And after that baby was born, his birth was fine, but oh my goodness, recovery was really hard. And I had some I had an initial pelvic, I like to call it the pelvic lattice because I just think it's such a beautiful way of describing how amazing and just
Yeah.
complex and just this gorgeous matrix that
Yeah.
is our pelvic area. So, I had a prolapse or a displacement, I like to kind of a displacement of
Words
my
matter.
pelvic. Words matter, they do, yeah, I had sort of a displacement of my pelvic organs, after my 3rd birth,
Okay.
in a quite serious way, and I healed myself.
Awesome.
I healed myself. I did all kinds of things I'll talk about in a moment, but after that, I had another couple of babies, and then here I am, 36 years old, and I'd just given birth to my sixth baby, something like that. And postpartum was, oh my
Mm.
goodness. My prolapse happened again, or emerged, returned.
Yeah.
That I had hemorrhoids that were so up until then, Lindsay,
Oh.
like, I remember, being at my grandparents' house as a kid and, like, watching TV and that there would be, like, ads for Preparation H, and for my whole life up until that point, I was like, "Oh, hemorrhoids, it's like a weird dumb thing for old people." Like, whatever. I understand now. It's horrific. It's
Yeah.
absolutely horrific, and, there's something I mean, I'm all about self-healing. I don't interact with the allopathic system whatsoever, and all healing, I believe, I know, emerges first from our beliefs. Uh, Illness, dis-ease occurs not first, I think, in the psyche, rooted in trauma, all of that. All dis-ease is,
Yeah.
psychosomatic, to some extent. And so when our intimate organs are moving and slipping in ways that are not integral, there's so much emotion that goes on in that. It's so vulnerable, and it's really a profound message from our bodies telling us that, like, we need love, and we need
Mm.
nurturing, and we need rest, and we need reconnection in all of the ways. And so, yeah, I just remember, like, sitting on the toilet after that birth and just, like, my body was not okay. And, like,
Mm.
I was not okay, and it felt so, so vulnerable, and yeah, and so I embarked on just a profound healing mission, and I had to shift everything in my life. Exactly as you said, nourishment, not just in terms of food at all, but on a soul
Yeah.
level. I had to deal with my marriage. I had to set aside time to do all of the energy work and the, self adoration and
Mm.
the belief and the God and just the everything stuff. It was a healing mission on every level. And what I see now, and also, regaining strength for sure, but you're so right. Like, I see so many programs out there and women in discussions out there about, like, what is the what, like, give me the 3 exercises,
Yeah.
the 3, and it's not that. It's a whole body reconstruction. It's a mind spirit reconstruction in every way. And I have worked with so many women now who have healed their bodies through this perspective without the surgery that the pelvic floor specialist or the obstetrician told her was inevitable. I mean,
Mhm.
so many women receive the message that they will never recover without surgery.
Totally.
Like,
Totally.
you're done. You're done.
Yeah.
And that is not, I mean, in most cases, I believe that is vast majority of cases, I think that's really, really not true. So coming out of my 36-year-old 6th pregnancy, uh, I was like, "Okay, we're like, my husband and I, no more children. This is ridiculous. We're absolutely done. Like, this has to stop. What are we thinking?" After 4, it starts to get weird, right? Um, and so when I found out that I was pregnant 2 years later at age 38, I really had not fully attended to my fitness as much as I could have. I did absolutely heal my pelvic lattice area, and I was good. I was fine. And I was, more or less okay. I was fine. But when I found out I was pregnant, it was like, whoa, I am 38 and I will never let that happen again. And
Mm.
I started a program for myself where I was, really consciously working out and becoming stronger and stronger every day through that pregnancy. Because I wanted to prove to myself that it was not that I was just too old and over the hill with that last pregnancy, and that I could have a completely different experience. And, this is part of what's so fun about life. We can use ourselves as the sort of life is just such an experiment. And the more we change things around, the more absolutely everything changes. And so
Mhm.
I got super fit during that pregnancy, and it was night and day. I experienced not even a twinge of pain throughout. I got to 44 weeks, felt absolutely amazing. My sleep was amazing. It absolutely shifted everything. And
Aw.
so, what I hear again from so many women, there is, and if this may trigger people, but I know from my own experience that that the aches and pains and bad sleep and for most women, none of that is actually necessary.
Right.
We can absolutely have something that is completely different. And, that birth was wonderful. And then postpartum was radically different as well, because
Mm.
I just felt amazing and everything was where it should be. And, rest, of course, recuperation is definitely so important. Um, But a few weeks later, I was up and about, and I didn't experience really any sort of, yeah, it was really night and day. And our bodies are so incredible too. We can heal from, I believe, literally everything. Um, and regaining fitness is it doesn't have to be hard. It's something that
Mm.
can come really easily. And, your program just looks like such a gift to
Well,
women in all of these ways.
aw, thank you. What were some of the ways that you nourished your soul? Like, if you can look back and remember, because I know that's a question people have, is they're some people are just kind of detached and they're like, wait a sec, what? Not just count my macros or that sort of thing.
Yeah, this is such an important one. And, I've struggled in my life allowing myself full nourishment in all of the ways. Um, and some of the things that are just requirements for me now include being outside.
Mhm.
And, we live close to the beach now. Very lucky. We live in a little tropical town. And yeah, going to the beach and just lying in the sand, you connecting with nature in
Mm.
whatever way, and literally grounding. So if it's possible, like lying on the earth and being with the earth, very consciously, ideally every day if possible, but at least a few times a week, is just, and it's so simple. It's so simple too, right? To just go outside. But I know that for some of us, it can actually be hard to get into that sort of rhythm. So, I go for a walk every day with my kids. That's also a requirement. Going to the beach as much as possible. Um, Nourishment, and a really important aspect of healing it, in any way specifically, but also just like general
Yeah.
continuous healing for
Cool.
me is dance,
Mm.
dancing, and yeah, being in my body. Yeah, I also try, most of the time I succeed, try to meditate for at least 10 minutes every day, which is such a short period of time, and yet it can still feel challenging to fit that in somehow. Um, Yeah, those are
That's
probably the
great.
big ones. Yeah, and, conscious breath work while breathing is so important, and most of us are not breathing, like,
Mhm.
not breathing. Most of us are not breathing
Yeah.
properly, but, like, true, yeah, true diaphragmatic breathing is really important, and I kind of
Mm,
fit all that in with my little so, yeah, I have kind of a morning excuse me, a morning, little morning ritual, that involves just sitting in meditation, doing some journaling. I
yeah,
have a little book of my incantations, prayers, um, positive self-talk, and
yeah.
then outside in nature. Yeah,
That's
those are the
awesome.
big ones.
I love that. Okay, I won't take too much more of your time, but I know we didn't touch on any preconception stuff yet. Oh. You're like, "This is a whole 'nother hour."
We could talk
So
for
maybe
ages,
we'll have you
really.
again. But this is, like, the chapter that I'm in my life, and, it's so fun, and, also, I see working with a ton of women that are in that preconception, open to conception chapter, struggling, and, I I do think, like, you can call and talk to your healthy spirit, healthy child spirit out there. I really believe that. And any tips for women such as myself or just anyone out there that is in this open to conception chapter about, yeah, journeying through it?
Yeah. Oh, there are so many, so many, helpful, practical so much practical stuff out
Yeah.
there. Nutrition's important and, just health is important and all of that stuff, right? Um, and I also want to acknowledge that it might seem a little bit rich for me to be offering anything in this area because I have not had any struggles with conception. Um, yeah. Uh, but I do think that when it comes to anything that we are in the active process of manifesting, of bringing
Mm,
into existence, into reality, into the world of the material, I think it's so important to approach it from a state of assuming the beingness of that eventuality
mm,
already having occurred. So living from the state of ease that is already present as the woman who has the desire fulfilled.
mm,
And I know that sounds a little bit, yeah, maybe a little bit eccentric or esoteric, but I do notice a common feature among all of the women who've been in my circle over the years who have really desired a baby and who have eventually conceived. A common feature among them that they've shared with me is that, it really was at the moment that I released my striving and
mm.
attachment and like tension and like just the wanting and the striving around it when I was able to relax and just allow it to happen from a space of knowing that this was inevitable. Um, that's
That's
often
awesome.
when it comes. So, yeah, and I think that's true for in a lot of different areas in our lives.
Totally.
Yeah.
With their if you're goal setting or in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Yeah, there has to be kind of a sense of relaxed, preemptive gratitude, I think.
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
Ooh, okay. Where can people find you? How can
Aw,
they work with you?
people can find me at www.yolandanorris-clark.com. I'm reading my own name. I gotta get that right. Yeah, so it's just my name with the dash in there .com, and I'm actually starting a waiting list for a new program that's coming up called Lattice, Lindsay, which is
Ooh.
all about the energetics of pelvic lattice or pelvic bowl restructuring. Yeah, and I have my new program portal, which is open. And actually, I was thinking that I would offer one seat in portal to someone in your audience.
No, I'm like me. No.
Yeah. Who are you?
No, just kidding. Somebody can get it.
Yeah, so if you wanna figure out a way of making that fun,
Cool.
yeah, I'd love to do
Awesome.
that for your people.
Uh,
So,
I
yeah.
appreciate you so much and the work you do in this world.
Aw.
Yeah, you're truly a light and, a living legend, like I said, but, yeah, you you are changing birth as we know it, so that's pretty powerful, and, I'm lucky to know you, lucky to learn from you, so thank you.
You sweetheart. Thank you so much, and you're doing such amazing work. I love what you're up to with BirthFit. It's
Thank
beautiful,
you.
Lindsay. Will this recording be available to people in the world? Is
Nice.
this gonna be
Yeah.
shared? You let me know, and
Yeah, so
share it on my
what I try to do is get this up ASAP on iTunes, iTunes and Spotify, and, then the video will eventually put on YouTube, so I'll share all the links with you. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Wonderful. Oh, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much
Yes,
for having me, Lindsay.
absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Amazing. All right,
Have a
we'll
great
talk to you
day.
soon. You
Bye.
too. Bye.
Oh, y'all. Could y'all tell I was nervous? Okay, that was awesome. If y'all loved this episode, let me know. Let me hear from you. Also, if you want that free seat, my wheels are turning. Uh, just simply send me a DM over on BirthFit at our Instagram. The first one there, you're going to be the first one to get it. Tell me, but you got to do this. You've got to tell me what your favorite part of this episode was. Like the pearl of wisdom that you walked away with, something you learned, something you're going to take away with you as a birth worker, as a woman approaching birth, conception, healing postpartum. I know we touched on a lot, and I know it was like kind of big picture, but I know this episode was so juicy. So send me a DM over on BirthFit, letting me know, excuse me, what your favorite part of this episode was, what your biggest learning takeaway was, and I will connect you with Yolanda to grab a free spot to her new program called The Portal. All right. Thank you all. Love you all. I will talk to you soon.